and welcome back to the Wedding Business Podcast. This is episode number 44, all the fours. And today I'm joined by the Wedding Business Club member, Anna Lewis. And I'm so excited for this episode. Anna, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much, Faye. I'm really excited too.
Yay! Anna, club members will know who you are, but for people listening who don't know you, tell us a bit about who Anna Lewis is.
Sure. So I'm Anna Lewis from Anna Lewis Cake Design. I have been working in the wedding industry now since 2018, the back end of 2018. Prior to that, I was in marketing for 20 years. I worked in technology event marketing and held some really senior roles. And one day I kind of just lost it and thought, this isn't for me anymore, and kind of left a really, really big salary and decided I was going to try my hand at making wedding cakes, because I'd always enjoyed making always enjoyed making cakes, and I'd made them for friends and family members for probably about 10 years.
Oh, wow.
So all the character cakes, the Peppa Pigs, the Minecraft cakes, all of those kind of cakes. And then I was like, this isn't something that I want to do, though. I don't want to be making character cakes. I love weddings. I love everything about weddings and what they symbolize and the joy and the happiness. And so that's what I want to do. But I can't justify just doing that and off I go to make wedding cakes. So I took on a freelance contract role, doing some marketing contract work, part-time, whilst I decided I would grow the business. But in reality, that became a full-time job, the marketing contract work. And so I kind of really didn't put the focus on the wedding cake business until the pandemic hit, where I found myself losing all my marketing contract work overnight. Literally overnight. I think it was the 21st of March, all my clients contacted me on the same day, and I was just sat in a place going, okay, what do I do now? And so I thought, you know what, this could be the kick up the backside that I really need to get going with my cake business. And so, I really pushed on with the website. I started to work really hard on Instagram. I remember during that first lockdown in the pandemic where we weren't allowed to go out, and I would make artificial dummy cakes every day, single day. I would make a cake. I would literally go out to my back garden, photograph that cake, walk in the house and strip that cake down, and then make another cake. And that was the only thing that was keeping me focused. I thought, well, I've got to grow a portfolio, but I've got no weddings. So what do I do? But it was the best thing I could have done, because I came out of that lockdown with loads of beautiful cakes. And then I got invited to lots of style shoots. And then it kind of just snowballed from there, really.
Fantastic. Wow. I mean, talk about baptism of fire. And we'll talk about the pandemic, and we'll talk about, it wasn't a great time for you on a number of levels, and we'll absolutely cover that. I think it's so important that we do that. Talking about starting a wedding business, though, because I feel like you are very qualified to have this conversation right now, considering what the last couple of years have included for you. There's quite a lot of chatter, and I ask all my guests this, but there's quite a lot of chatter about, I'm going to start a business today, a wedding business today, and, in a month's time, I would like to be fully booked. There's a lot talked about it, even, from other coaches, start your business and get booked out straight away. It's not an overnight job, is it?
No, definitely not. It was only, and it's really hard because I started my business just before the pandemic properly. So I've not had any kind of normal, but there is so much pressure to be successful overnight, and you've got to put the time in. I sat there and I made cake after cake after cake, and I stripped those cakes off and I took the photos. But so many people come into the industry and think, well, I want to be as successful as her. She's only done it in a couple of years, so why can't I do it? But you have to put that time in. You can't expect the work to just instantly come to you. And it's not been easy. I've worked really, really hard. That, for example, that first summer when we were after lockdown, I think I did 15 styled shoots that summer.
Wow.
15. I did not stop. And some of them weren't necessarily the right fit for me. And I've learned from that. And now I won't just accept any styled shoot, fortunately. But I had to do that time, and you have to kind of go through a process, I think, to understand you need to deserve that, you know, where you are later on down the line.
Yeah, I agree. I think some, you know, a lot is talked about shortcuts, and I'm 100%, I'll put my hands up. If there is a shortcut, I will take it. I am like the path of least resistance human. It's just my innate desire to get there quick, get there fast. I'm a very impatient person. But there are some things that you have to go through. And this is, you know, rawer for you than it is for me because of the length of time we've been in business. But it's almost like you've got to make the mistakes for yourself to really feel them. For example, you know, they're not huge mistakes, but working with the wrong people or accepting the wrong styled shoot. You kind of have to go through that, don't you? To really go, oh, I can see, I feel this now. This doesn't feel right. Do you think there's value in that, in making those mistakes?
Absolutely. You can only become better by having mistakes and learning from them. And, you know, everyone has mistakes. I'm still making mistakes now. You know, I look back on some of the wedding cakes that I've booked in and the prices that I've charged. And, you know, it's little things like that. You're like, oh, that's daylight robbery now. I can't. But some of these weddings were booked in 2019 and they still haven't happened. And I'm dealing with them nearly 3 years down the line. And you're like, oh, but that's life, isn't it? That's part of that process.
Yeah, it's a really good example, the pricing one, though. I remember doing exactly the same. And thinking, what was I thinking when I agreed to this? And of course, the reality is that when you agreed to that, that felt like a good gig.
It did.
If your business grows and evolves at a pace, which Anna, just watching you grow has been phenomenal. Like, you're such a talent and your business has grown as a reflection of that. But it's why you have to stay on top of things like pricing, because in those early stages, the trajectory of your business is so much steeper than perhaps, you know, year 7, 8, 9. So it's a constant reminder that you need to make the right decisions for you.
But one thing I would say, Faye, is we're talking about shortcuts. The Wedding Business Club is great for that because, you know, ultimately I joined the Wedding Business Club, I think it was around October 2020. Yeah. And I didn't have a number of things in place at that point. And so just working through all the modules that were available to me at that point was fantastic because I could almost ramp up really fast without having to deal with a lot of those mistakes that some people have to go through, and, you know, focusing on the right things and stuff like that. So I was able to do a lot of that really quickly, and it really reduced down that kind of that whole marketing time to market period of time. Yeah,
there's a lot of, I remember it like that there wasn't a version of the Wedding Business Club when I was in the first couple of years of my business, and genuinely, I mean, it was like walking around in the dark. Oh, I'll try that for a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, that didn't work, I'll try that thing. And I think that's where people get worn down really quickly, isn't it? Because you're trying to be good at your thing, in your case designing cakes, in mine photography, but then on top of that there's this whole layer of, oh, you've got to run a business now. Yeah. And it's a bit to juggle, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Anna, talk to me about just off the back of what you were saying, you know, some of the things you've booked in now, you think, oh, crikey, yeah, my business is going in a different direction. As it stands this moment in time, when an inquiry lands in your inbox or your DMs on Instagram, how do you know, yeah, this is the one, these clients are my perfect clients? And how do you know, oh, I'm not sure this is a good fit? What are the signs?
The ones where it's not a good fit are the ones where they start, how much is this? Or
Yeah.
how much for this? And they send a picture of a very random cake that's generally not mine. The ones where I know it's a perfect fit, more often than not, are the ones that start with, I've followed your work for a while, I love your work. They send me my cakes of inspirational shots that they'd really like.
Yeah.
I had one actually last week that sent me an email, and they said that they'd followed my Instagram for a while, they've just got engaged, but they know that I'm the cake maker for them and they'd love to work with me. And that's just straight away, I don't even have a clue what cake they want. But that's a good starting point, isn't it, rather than how much is this cake going to cost?
Yeah. Isn't it interesting, because like, I guess, you know, you've been through some business experience that has probably taught you quite a lot about actually running your business. You can cherry pick the bits that are useful. I think a lot of people in the early days of running their business, they get very caught up in, oh God, what shall I charge? Or, oh, I'm charging too much. And it's such an indicator, isn't it? That initial conversation around money and the exchange of, you're going to pay me because I'm going to make your wedding cake. It's such an indicator of whether we're in the right place with people. And yet we're, you know, a lot of people are so terrified to even go there and even acknowledge that.
I think when someone starts that conversation with price, I know they're not going to be the right fit for me, because I'm not the cheapest cake designer out there. So, and I wouldn't want to be. Where I would like someone to start the conversation is around the art that's created from my cakes, and that they appreciate the time and love that I put into my cakes. And they're not just cakes to me, they are my canvas to be able to create something beautiful. If I was commercially just wanting to make cakes, I would just be whacking out lots of drip cakes very quickly for everyone. But that's not why I do it. So I think that's really important, that conversation flows in that way.
100%. And charging, we've got an episode coming up on this very soon, actually. Charging, you know, I'm not even talking about lots of money, which is of course subjective. What one person thinks is a lot for a photographer or a cake maker is different to the next. But charging the right amount of money, which is a fair exchange for your talent and your time and your experience and your know-how, in exchange for them getting the thing that they love, it's a win-win on both sides. And it affords you the time to pour your heart and soul into your creation, and it gives your client the thing that they really want. And I'm not sure enough is made of that scenario, because that's what it is. When someone pays you for your service or your product in the wedding industry, that's what happens. It's an exchange, right? People get what they want. You get to pour your heart and soul into it so that it is what they want.
Absolutely. Yeah, completely agree.
So tell us about your ideal wedding. If you could just plan everything and have the ideal client, what would it look like? What would it smell like? What would it feel like? Tell us all.
Well, I actually had one last year, and that's how I know what I would like it to be like in the future. So I had a couple that came to me, and they were just having a very small, intimate wedding at Uridge Manor, and we just clicked, and all the conversations that we had on Zoom, etc., were just, you could tell that they just loved my cakes. And when I turned up at the wedding, it was just beautiful. Everything about the wedding was beautiful. Even though it was so small, it ticked every box in terms of the kind of venues that I'd like to work at in the future. The way that everything was kind of put together was just beautiful. So yeah, that was definitely my wedding.
How nice that you've got that now. That can be like a benchmark.
I know, it's a benchmark, but when everything else comes in, you're like, oh.
Anna, tell us about going viral.
Yeah, well, that's a bit crazy, really, and it's still going.
I remember messaging you, and you were like, you know, that emoji of, oh my gosh, I don't know what's happening. Yeah, tell us, what happened? How did it happen?
It's just one cake, and I posted this cake after a wedding that took place in London in July last year, and I posted the cake, and it was about 400 followers, 400 likes I got and it was just a cake. It was a lovely cake, but it was just a cake.
It's a beautiful cake, Anna. It is stunning.
And then I reposted the cake because I don't know why I reposted the cake. I just thought, oh, I need a bit of pink on my feed. So I posted the cake again and it went nuts. And it got picked up by Instagram's algorithm. And I think it got seen by about 82,000 people, which I thought was a lot. However, I then posted the cake and it got picked up by brides online, Carrot and Cake. Loads and loads of places were resharing this cake, which was just really bizarre to me. And then just before New Year, I posted the cake again, just saying, oh, here's the most popular cake of the year, like everyone else was doing, your most popular picture, for example. Yeah. And since then, it's now got nearly 20,000 likes and has been reshared all over again. And I just don't really understand it. But off the back of that, I've had 3,500 followers off one cake.
Whoa.
Well, I know it's insane, but it just goes to show, doesn't it, that I may not have reposted that cake and that cake would have sat down in my feed with 500 followers. Sometimes it's worth resharing some content.
Yeah.
And you never know what might happen. Yeah. But yeah, it's bizarre.
Yeah. I mean, it's the sweet spot of a beautiful piece of viral content, I think. If anyone's interested, go and check it out on Anna's feed. But I think the story of what they were wearing when they cut the cake, I think it was all just the perfect storm, and it isn't just a cake, it's a very, very, very pretty cake, one that you should be very proud of. So yeah, goodness me, well, it goes to show, great example of not just letting old content go to waste. Repurpose your content, folk. So we touched on it a little bit at the beginning. I know that this last year has been a really challenging year, both in your business and personally. Tell us what's happened behind the scenes of this business and you growing so quickly. Tell us what's actually happening underneath.
Well, I guess the whole pandemic was, there's nobody on this planet who hasn't been touched by the pandemic in one way or not. And in some ways it was very positive for me as a business because it allowed me to get focused, and I'm now doing what I love, and I wasn't doing what I loved, and I needed that kick that the pandemic allowed me to have to be able to get going. However, the back end of 2020 was really hard for me because I seemed to have this perfect storm of bad things that happened, and I want to keep it quite light because I'm a really positive person. I always have been, but I found myself in quite a dark, difficult place. I lost my Instagram account randomly. I don't know why. I still don't know to this day why. I didn't have it for a whole month. Eventually I decided, right, I'm just going to get on with this. I started a new Instagram account, and the industry got really behind me, which was amazing. And within an hour, I had nearly 1,000 followers. But then Instagram didn't like that at all because it was a brand new account, and it obviously triggered some warning that I was some kind of bot or something. So they then disabled that account. And I just kind of got a bit down with the whole Instagram thing. And so I took a bit of a break from Instagram, decided I was just going to leave it at that. But I did a little video on my other Instagram account, which is my luxury treats account, and just an IGTV video just complaining about Instagram and how unhappy I was about the whole situation. And then suddenly my account was back the next morning. Very bizarre. I'm not going to complain. I'm not going to, but it was back. But that was the first thing. And then unfortunately, I lost my dad to COVID in November 2020, and he had diabetes and kidney failure, so we'd been shielding him that whole year, and then he had to go into hospital for a procedure, and he caught COVID in hospital, and within a week we'd lost him. but it was really hard because we just didn't have much closure with the funeral, for example. It was just families and friends, and we were in a lockdown at that point, so we couldn't give him the send-off he deserved. And then at the funeral, the next day, I realised I had COVID. So everyone at the funeral then had to self-isolate. And it was just, like I say, it was a perfect storm of a number of different things that happened subsequently. The kids couldn't go back to school. We didn't have Christmas. My mum spent it on her own the first year after my dad died. And then my mother-in-law passed away soon after that as well. So it was just all of these things. And I found myself in a place where I'd just never been there before. And it was hard to kind of get myself out of it. And I was really depressed. But I found that I needed to find some coping techniques to get out of that. And one of them was my business. And I literally threw everything into the cake business because it was my way of having a purpose each day, and a focus of not thinking about all of the bad stuff that was going on around me and how difficult things were. And so I just, every day I would set myself a little goal, like, I'm going to do this. And I would take it day by day because that was the easiest way I could deal with things.
Yeah.
But I got through that day, and then the next day became easier, and then the next day became easier. And then, you know, with the help of some support groups as well, like Cruise Bereavement and things like that, I got out of it, and I found brighter days. But it was genuinely, I'd like to say it was kind of all my family and support, and, you know, obviously they were there, but sometimes you need something that's for you to help you get from a difficult place. And for me, it was just to keep focused on the business. And that's what I did. And then, yeah, come the spring, when we were all allowed to get our kids back to school, things felt a lot better. Yeah, things felt a lot better. And then it was just a baptism of fire after that with the weddings. I think I did 35 weddings in a 6-month period. And by Christmas, this just gone, I was exhausted.
Wow. Oh, Anna, thank you for sharing that story. I'm so sorry you had such a low time of it. But what an inspiration for sharing that with us. You know, you make it sound very simple, and I know behind the scenes it's actually not that simple. Just doing one thing every day when you are in that space can be jolly hard. So I never want you to underplay like the resilience and the strength that you have shown to be able to do that. But I just love this picture of you, you know, not in a great space, craving, you know, something to help lift yourself out of that. And then that beautiful compound effect of doing one thing each day or one thing each week when you're ready, that has now taken you to this place where probably if I'd come to tell you 2-3 years ago, Anna, this is what it's going to be like in a couple of years, you wouldn't have believed it.
No, definitely not. And I think, you know, the reason I wanted to share this with everyone that listens to this podcast is because there are lots of people that are going through difficult times, and it's important that you do ask for help, but you also find something that can kind of lift you and keep you going. And there are so many people out there struggling right now. So it's important.
I totally agree. And I think that's one of the things that makes our industry so brilliant. And there are, I could wax lyrical about this, but because we're in business, but we're doing something that we love, like it's sort of that side of it almost becomes your therapy, doesn't it? Like, I love taking photos. I am useless at making cakes. I'm very good at eating them, but I'm useless at making it. But give me a camera and I could go and please myself for hours and days and weeks. And I'm guessing the same goes for you with baking.
Yeah, absolutely. It was therapy to me. It was my therapy. Just having a purpose every day. And obviously, you know, I've got 3 beautiful kids, so they were my purpose to get up in the mornings, but I needed something for me.
Yeah. And you found it. How fantastic. So I know, because people tell me, that a lot of people listen to this podcast and they're on the cusp of actually starting their business. Like, they can see that our industry rocks, which is evident, but they're just like, oh, I'm just about to start. And I think actually one of the good things, one of the positive things that will come out of this pandemic is people reassessing, you know, their lifestyle, you know, reassessing whether they actually want to go back to the job that makes them unhappy, or that underpays them or undervalues them, or whatever it might be. Typically after a recession, for example, people start, that's when I started my business. I was made redundant during a recession, and I started my business. Typically that happens. So I think we'll see a lot of that in the next year or so. What advice would you give to someone who's at that stage of, I really want to do this thing, but ooh, I'm a bit nervous? What would your advice be?
Go for it. Honestly, just go for it, because you don't regret the things that you do. Generally, you regret the things that you don't do. And I wanted to make cakes for a long, long time, but because the money was easy coming in from the marketing work, I didn't. And actually, it took a catalyst of a worldwide pandemic for me to actually do that. And it doesn't need to be like that. I'm probably busier now than I was doing the marketing work, and I did it to kind of have more work-life balance, but that's a different story. But I'm so much happier. I'm every morning, and it sounds so cheesy, I don't feel like I work. And that's when you know that you love what you do, is because it doesn't feel like work. And I'll go to bed and I'm thinking about cakes, and I do need to switch off sometimes, but I'm thinking about, oh, my next design and all this and this, and you know that that's not work then. And it's lovely that people pay me to do what I love doing. But I would say go slow once you make that decision, because it can be really, really overwhelming, everything you need to think about. And there's so much pressure, I think, within our industry to be successful from day one, and with imposter syndrome. And, you know, there are so many cake designers out there in particular who have beautiful feeds, and you feel really overwhelmed at, you know, how much they're achieving and the venues that they're working in and things like that. And actually, you need to just take it back and stay in your own lane and think about, what are the steps that I need to do to get to where I want to go, and when do I need to achieve them by? And now I'm much more laser focused about where I want to be, rather than getting distracted by all the noise around me of, oh, they're doing that and they're doing that, and why am I only on this many followers? And which I found really hard in the first few years. And now, if I'm ever feeling overwhelmed, I always go back to the start of, scroll all the way back to someone's start of someone's Instagram feed, and it makes me feel so much better. And that's why when some people say that they go through their feed and they cull all their really old content, and I'm like, no, don't do that. Please don't do that.
Yeah.
Because your clients want to see a progression as well. They want to see where you've come from.
Yeah, but I love that piece of advice. I'm definitely going to hop off and scroll back to the beginning of my photography account, because I find it cringy, but there's the evidence that sometimes you need to see to feel good about where you've come from. It's so easy to tell yourself, oh, I've been plugging away at this business for 2 years and I've made no progress. I don't actually believe that that's possible. If you are committed, I think you will see that you've come from somewhere. So I love that piece of advice. How many people are now scrolling back through there?
But I think the great thing about cake designers in particular, you have the opportunity within your own styled shoots are one thing, and it's fantastic to get involved in them, the networking opportunities, etc. But you can make stuff at home all day, every day, and it doesn't need to be a perfectly designed photo to get, you know, the cake that went viral. I literally took that here in in my kitchen and 20,000 likes now. So you can keep going and building that portfolio for yourself at home, just to get you started.
Yeah, great advice. Oh, Anna, I could talk to you all day. Thank you so much for your time. I've got one last question, because obviously you are a member of the Wedding Business Club, which is why you're on this podcast. In a nutshell, tell us about your experience as a member.
I really enjoy being a member. I wouldn't say I'm one of the hugely active members, but what I love about the membership is that I can just dip in when I need to. And sometimes, I'm there and I'll give some advice if I've got the right advice to give, obviously. But it feels like you're part of a work environment, if that makes sense. So yes. We all work. We're all quite isolated in the way that we work. Most people don't work in teams. I'm alone all day, every day working. And so it feels like you can have a work chat, but yes, you're online, but these are colleagues almost. So it's quite nice from that environment.
I totally get that. I found it so lonely to go from my full-time job to being a wedding photographer. I remember sitting at my kitchen table in my old house and being like, well, this is a bit quiet, isn't it? And so, having that network around you, I think is really important. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Anna. Thank you for being a guest. All credit to you for everything you're doing in your business. I think you're amazing. So keep it up.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anna.